I'd like to welcome you all here this evening. My name is Ryan Miller. I'm the Emergency Management Director for Howard County. This is a great crowd, so thank you all for coming out. This shows us you all are the cream of the crop to come out on such a nice night like this, right? To come out on a beautiful evening and to hear from our friends at the Maryland Insurance Administration. But you don't have to look really far right now around the country and around the world to see the effects of disaster. We actually, just about an hour ago, sent off 2 more members of our office to go to Florida to help relieve a team that's been down there all week in a base of operations, relieving a team from New York City, actually. So the whole country literally is trying to pitch in right now to do some of the response and recovery. But this topic here in Ellicott City is a very relevant topic as well. We've got some friends here who have personally gone through disaster here in Ellicott City with the flood last July. And that is one of many hazards we know we face here in Howard County. Any of you who have looked at our Natural Hazards Handbook, our Community Hazard Handbook, have seen that flooding is one of our top hazards. We've known that. We've experienced a lot of flooding, not just in Ellicott City, but around the community. So as part of our outreach and our attempts to make sure that our community has as much information as possible, we asked for our friends from the Maryland Insurance Administration to come out tonight. And Joy Hatchett's been a good friend of ours for a number of years, and I think you guys are in for a real excellent educational opportunity. I did want to say that the county executive, Alan Kittleman, is unable to be here tonight. He tried to rearrange some of his schedule to be here, but he's unable to be here. And I also wanted to call attention to our preparedness boot camp. So how many of you have been part of the preparedness boot camp so far? Phil? No?
Well, I wrote checks for the door prize.
Okay, all right. So in partnership with the Community Emergency Resilience Network, we've been promoting something we've called the Preparedness Boot Camp for the last few weeks. It began the beginning of September. It's National Preparedness Month. I told Amanda that I wanted to come in with a backpack that has been provided by CERN on my back and a hard hat and a whistle, but I forgot the backpack and the whistle, otherwise I was going to do it. But this is a campaign to try to get people involved, and one of the steps in the Preparedness Boot Camp, not only building a kit, making a plan, is to get involved. So you all being here tonight checks that box. So if you go onto our Facebook page and you say, I got involved by attending the Maryland Insurance Administration outreach event, you've already checked one box, and you will be able to register to win one of the prizes provided to us by our friends at the Community Emergency Resilience Network. So thank you for that partnership, and please go online, check it out, and interact with us there. All the material that we hand out, that we present there, is stuff that we feel pretty passionate about and feel like it's going to be very valuable to you. So it's not just stuff that we just hand out that we got from some other entity, but it's really material that we feel really strongly about. So do that, and then maybe try to share it around your offices, around your schools, around your networks as well. Okay, without further ado, I would like to introduce Associate Commissioner at the Maryland Insurance Administration, our friend, Ms. Joy Hatchett. So Joy, thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joy It's going to be hard. My name is Joy Hatchett, and I work for the state agency known as the Maryland Insurance Administration. How many of you are familiar with our state agency? Well, for those of you that are not, we are the state agency that regulates the insurance industry. We're the ones that make sure that the insurance companies comply with all of Maryland laws. We look at their finances, we look at the policies that they sell, we look at and we do market conduct exams to make sure all of that is done in accordance with the laws that the General Assembly passes. And we do it for all types of insurance: automobile, homeowners, life insurance, health insurance. So what? Let's say you get involved in an automobile accident. and you're not happy with the way your automobile insurance company handles your claim. What do most people do? They go out and they hire an attorney. Have nothing in the world against attorneys, I'm an attorney. But that attorney is going to charge you for what work they're doing for you. Why not come to the state agency that'll help you for free? And then if we can't resolve it, then go out and hire your attorney. After one of these storms, you've got damage to your home. Unhappy with the way the insurance company handles your claim. State agency that'll help you for free. Loved one dies. You need the proceeds of a life insurance policy to bury the loved one. Insurance companies dragging their feet. State agency that'll help you for free. You go to the doctor. They say you need a particular medication or a course of treatment. Insurance company says not paying. State agency that'll help you for free. I tell people to think of us like the Better Business Bureau of insurance, but we have the authority to order insurance companies to pay claims because remember, we're the regulator. So tonight I'm going to focus on disasters, disaster preparedness. We're going to talk a little bit about flood insurance, but we're also going to talk in general about homeowners insurance because anything can be a disaster. It doesn't have to be a hurricane or a flood. If you have a major fire, that's a disaster to you. So the thing that we try to do is to help you on the front end. Understand what your policy does and does not cover so that you're not for the first time when you have a claim trying to figure out what is in this policy. So I do very informal presentations. So if you have questions as I go along, raise your hand and let's try to address them, because if we wait to the end, you'll forget your question and you won't get answered and you'll go away angry and then Ryan will feel disappointed in me. So let's just try to make this a learning experience, okay? All right, homeowners insurance. If you have a mortgage, your mortgage company has required you to have homeowners insurance. Now, one of the things that we find is after people have paid off that homeowners policy, many of our seniors end up dropping homeowners insurance. And I tell them, well, I understand that it's a way to save money, but if something bad happens tomorrow, a major fire, how are you going to rebuild your home if you don't have homeowners insurance, right? So we sort of recognize that for the most part, we need it. But the question always is, how much homeowners insurance do we need to have? What's the correct amount? And most people, if I ask them, they would say, well, it's whatever I could sell my house for on the market. Absolutely not. In your homeowner's policy, all that an insurance company is going to pay you is the amount to rebuild/replace your home. So if it's only going to cost you $300,000 to rebuild your home, and on the market you could get $400,000 for your home, and so you're thinking, well, I need to get a $400,000 insurance policy. You're wasting your money. What you need is the exact amount that it's going to cost to rebuild it. So how do I figure that out? Well, yes, ma'am.
Can you also address the opposite situation when your house is worth a lot less than they're saying it will cost to rebuild?
Absolutely. Her question is if I can address the opposite end, because you don't want to be overinsured, but you also don't want to be underinsured. So let's keep going with what I was talking about. So if you get $400,000 worth of coverage and it's only going to cost you $300,000 to rebuild your home, the insurance company's never going to pay you $400,000. So you have to figure out how much is it going to cost to rebuild. Well, insurance companies have all these databases, and what they do is they plunk in, what is your home made of? How much square footage? What kind of floors do you have? What kind of cabinets do you have? They put all of that stuff into one of their systems and pops out a number. Now, you can do that if you don't want to have your insurance company do it for you, but if you do it, it's going to cost you money. But in that little yellow book on the back, it'll tell you some of the websites that you can go. But you can definitely do it yourself. Now, the lady in the back had a question about what if she believes her house is worth less? It would cost less to rebuild. Then that's a discussion you need to have with the agent, because that's all a part of underwriting.
It's slightly different. I might agree with them that it might cost, the historic houses, it might cost that much to rebuild it, but it's not worth anywhere near that much on the market.
Well, you're not as worried about the market. When you're dealing with your homeowner's insurance, you're worried about the price to rebuild. But you said something different. You said it was a historic home. And with historic homes, most insurance companies have another factor, because they can't, in lots of historic areas, and I'm assuming that's the case here in Ellicott City, and actually I think that's one of the things that I learned after the flood, that there's lots of limitations on what you can and can't do when rebuilding a historic home. So there may be reasons that it's going to cost a lot more to rebuild. But that's a discussion that you need to have with your agent or with the company to make sure you come up with the actual cost to rebuild your home. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's sort of if you're in that scenario where you have a house that they're saying, let's say, oh, it's going to cost $500,000 to rebuild, but you know the market price, maybe it's $200,000. Can you walk away from the house if it's just completely demolished?
With insurance companies, this is how, and we're going to talk about this a little bit with personal property. They're only going to give you replacement cost if you actually replace it. So if they say the value of your home it's depreciated and it's only worth $100,000, but to rebuild it, it's going to cost you $200,000. You don't get the $200,000 until you replace. Now, some insurance contracts will say you can rebuild your home someplace else, but you need to look at the particulars of your contract. Insurance is just like any other type of contract. It's very specific to you. Different companies have different provisions. So while one company may say you have to rebuild in the same location, another company may say it's fine if you rebuild someplace else. So you pull out that old dusty insurance contract and take a look at the provisions. Now that's a good point. Let's talk about that for a second. Probably the only time you've ever looked at or thought about your insurance contract was at the settlement table. And probably then you really didn't think about it because somebody said you need to have homeowners insurance and you signed the dotted line. And you couldn't have told me what your policy did and didn't cover. Every year, the insurance company's been sending you these little love letters, and you may or may not be reading them. Those little love letters aren't really love letters. They're changing the terms of your contract. So if you're not reading what they're sending you, you have no idea how your policy looks now. And what they've done is they have changed the terms. So every time you get a love note from your insurance company, look at more than what it currently costs. Look at what it says. And if they send you information and you don't understand it, pick up the phone and ask them what it's all about. There's a sheet on the table that is all about understanding your declaration page. And let me tell you how important it is to understand what your policy has changed to. Your deductible. You all are really familiar with automobile deductibles. It's a flat number, $250, $500, or $1,000. You're used to that. And for the most part, when you started having homeowners insurance companies had flat $500, $1,000, sometimes $2,000, right? Over time, insurance companies have changed their rules on deductibles. Some now have a hurricane deductible, some have a wind deductible, some have a hurricane, a wind, and another deductible. But do you know what else some of them have? A percentage deductible. A percentage of the claim? No. A percentage of what you have your home insured for. So let's take that $300,000 and let's say you have a 10% percentage deductible. That means your deductible is $30,000. So that means if you have a loss for $26,000, you pay $26,000, insurance company pays $0. If you have a loss of $31,000, you pay $30,000, insurance company pays $1. Now, if, like most of us, you don't have $30,000 laying around, you say, well, I'm going to delay getting the repairs made, right? Wrong. Because the insurance company is going to say, you no longer meet our underwriting guidelines, we don't want you anymore, and you're canceled. I'm making this up, right? Absolutely not. After Hurricane Irene, people in Southern Maryland, I can't tell you the number of people that didn't realize that they had percentage deductibles, and all of a sudden they couldn't come up with the amount, and they lost their policies. And trying to get another homeowner's insurance company to cover you when you've been canceled because you haven't repaired your property is very, very, very difficult, if not impossible. Okay? So if you take nothing else from this presentation, go home and figure out whether you have a percentage deductible. And if you're not clear, tomorrow, call your insurance company. And don't ask them what the percent is. Ask them what that means in dollars, okay? Because a percent, I don't do math. That's why I went to law school. So you want to know at the end of the day how much it's going to cost you before the insurance company pays anything. Make sense? All right. Let's talk about some of the stuff that your homeowner's policy doesn't cover. We all know that homeowner's insurance never, ever, ever covers flooding. You don't have to live beside the lake or the stream or the river to have flooding. Anytime water seeps into your home, that's deemed flooding, okay? What else doesn't your homeowner's insurance generally cover? Earthquakes. We don't have to worry about earthquakes. You got a real short memory. We've had earthquakes, several of them. And I don't tell people that you have to get earthquake coverage, but it's something you need to think about. I don't tell people that they need to get any type of coverage, but what you do is you need to make an informed decision as to whether or not this is coverage that you need. Water, sewer, backup. The insurance company has to make you an offer. You have to accept the offer and pay extra for the coverage. And some companies may offer different dollar amounts, but you have to make the decision what works for you. What else?
Volcano.
Well, I don't know if we could possibly have a volcano here, but you never know. The other thing that I try to really, especially when I come out to Howard and Montgomery County, let's talk trees. This young man and I live side by side. He takes great care of his property. Me, I'm on the road all the time. My trees are a hot mess. My tree falls on his house. Whose insurance has to pay? His. Repeat that. My tree, his house, his insurance has to pay. The only way my insurance might have to pay is if he put me on written notice that the next time the wind blew, my old rotten tree was going to fall on his house. Okay? Now let's say this time it's still my tree, but instead of falling on his house, it falls on mine. Well, believe it or not, I'm relatively fortunate because it's fallen on my house, so my insurance company is going to pay to remove it off of my house, and I'm going to get some repair work done. Instead of falling on my house, it falls on my fence, but it only damages 3 or 4 portions of my fence. I've got a brand new, beautiful, beautiful fence, but it's only damaged a little bit. They're going to pay to replace the whole fence, right? No, just the portion that it's damaged. But I can't get 3 or 4 pieces to actually match because this is a custom-made fence. So sad, too bad. Now let's move from it falling on my property to the middle of my yard. Now, it hasn't damaged my property, but it's just laying in the middle of my yard. The insurance company will give, depending on the company, $500 or $1,000 to remove that tree. Not per tree. So if I have 5 or 6 huge trees, here's your check for $500 or $1,000, and you figure out how to pay for the rest of it. Okay? The other big thing that we have consistently is hail damage. When I first started doing this, and I'm not going to tell anybody how long ago that was, if we had a hailstorm and I got damage to one side of my house, the insurance company would have paid to rewrap the entire house. Now, with the hailstorm, if I get damage to only one side, they're only going to pay to replace, and it's not all companies, but most companies, the portion of the house that was actually damaged by the hail. And some companies are even a little bit stricter. They're only going to pay if the hail breaks the siding. The chances of the type of hail that we get here breaking the siding generally does not happen. That's the kind of hail that they get in Texas. So what does that tell you you need to do? Read your contract and understand what's covered and what's not covered. There are limits on jewelry. There are limits on computer equipment. There are limits on coins. There are limits on guns. Everything, there is a limit. If you look at the brochure on the back, it sort of tells you. And what I tell people to do is, you don't always have to buy extra coverage, but understand what the limits are so that you're not thinking that a claim is going to be paid for, and in fact, it's not. Okay? So let's talk about the biggie, flooding. As I said, flooding is never covered by your homeowner's insurance policy. So you have to get a separate flood insurance policy. Now, there are a couple of different ways that you can acquire flood insurance. The primary way, and the way that most people have heard of, is through the National Flood Insurance Program. This is a federal program, and it is something basically that's written by Congress, and what that program pays and doesn't pay is written in law. So there's nothing, if I buy my policy from an insurance, a federal NFIP policy, if I buy it from an insurance company, or if I buy it from the NFIP, it's going to be the same policy. They can't differ because there's only one type of policy. But if you choose not to buy it through the federal government, there are some private insurance companies that will sell flood insurance. So, but there are different kinds of ways that some of the private companies will do it. The flood insurance policy only offers usually about $250,000 worth of coverage. So if your home is worth more than that, some companies will offer what's called excess coverage. But then there's some companies that will offer you the coverage totally. So just shop around. And if someone tells you, you're dealing with an agent and the agent says, you can't get it, here in Howard County, yes, you can. So if the agent tells you you can't, check with a different agent. Go online, floodsmart.gov, and we've got a brochure back there that talks all about that. There are ways to get flood insurance, but you need to understand that flood insurance is not like homeowners insurance. Give you two examples. You have a house that catches on fire and the house totally burns down. If you have the appropriate amount of homeowners insurance, the homeowners insurance company will give you enough to rebuild your home and for the stuff that you've got insured that you've had, all your personal property. And while you're rebuilding your home, they'll give you a place to live. It's called additional living expenses. And under your homeowner's policy, they don't care where the stuff is. It can be in the basement, it can be in the attic. They don't care. Flood insurance. First and foremost, biggest difference, you have to buy two policies. One for the structure and one for your stuff. So, and they call it a content policy. I call it a stuff policy. So, if you have a structure policy and not a policy to cover your stuff, it ain't covered. So let's say you buy both policies and you have a woman cave. You've got the neatest basement, you've got all this wonderful flooring, a huge television, all this great stuff in your basement. Home floods. Flood insurance isn't covering that stuff. Flood insurance covers very limited stuff in a basement. It covers the basics. So, don't put your good stuff in the basement. Also, big difference. There is no such thing as additional living expense with the flood insurance program. Okay? So while your house could have totally washed away, and while you need a place to stay, so sad, too bad. Other big difference. Flooding. You guys all know the power of water. The water comes up right to where the TV hits. They're not going to tell you to tear out all your walls. They're going to cut it to where the water line is, tell you to use some Clorox, and clean it up. So if you're listening to me, you're like, well, why in the world would I ever buy flood insurance? Because if you lose everything, how are you going to recover? FEMA's going to save us, right? Even for the folks in Houston and in Florida, the general average amount of money that most of them are going to get back is like $30,000 or $40,000. If you've lost everything, can you rebuild with $30,000 or $40,000? Don't think so. So once again, what I tell people is I never tell people you got to buy it. But you really need to at least consider it. And think about if something bad happens tomorrow, how am I going to replace my home and my stuff? Yes, ma'am.
So a lot of the houses around here, they're built into the side of the hill, which the insurance company then defines the first floor as a walkout basement. And most of the expensive stuff is in that first floor. Can you talk about what level of coverage that has?
When you are dealing with the NFIP, they look specifically to see if it's totally below ground. And if it's a totally below ground basement, the stuff in it won't be covered. But some of the basements that are subfloor, I've seen them not cover that stuff too. So the best thing to do is not wait till an event. Have the conversation up front, because after Isabel, there were lots of things that I'm looking at and, oh, this will be covered. Not covered. So really have that conversation up front. And then once you have that conversation, reduce it to writing. Okay? Yes, sir.
If you have secondary damage, the wind comes in and bursts pipe, and your water pipe now floods your basement, who covers that?
That's not flooding. What you just described is the bursting of a pipe. Flooding occurs when water seeps into your basement. So it's an outside force. Now that water that seeps in might come even from a swimming pool, and that's considered flooding. But if you have, now listen to me closely on this, a sudden and accidental bursting of a pipe. I'm going to say it again. Sudden and accidental. Not a pipe that over time has corroded, that over time you've not done anything to. Even if you didn't know it, the only time the insurance company is going to pay for the damage caused by a pipe is if it's sudden and accidental. But here's the thing. Most of the insurance companies won't pay for the pipe or the plumber. They'll cover and pay for the water, the things that the water damaged. So I see it all the time with the hot water heater. Hot water heater bursts. Only the stuff that the hot water heater water damaged, but they don't pay for the hot water heater, okay? But what you described is not a flood. But let's talk about concurrent causation, because we had some of that in Houston, and well, not in Houston. Houston, that was mainly flooding, but in some of the other areas in Texas, and we had it definitely after Katrina. The wind blows the roof off, but later the flood waters push the home away. As long as you can show that there were two distinct events, then you'll get coverage for losing the roof. But if the wind and the water happen at the same time, it's called concurrent causation. And because flooding is not a covered loss, they use that to not cover anything. Yes, sir.
It's a 16-inch pipe down the street belonging to the town, not your individual pipe, and that floods you suddenly. Is that covered?
Maybe. It's going to depend on the terms of your particular policy. Some of the policies cover if the pipe is only in your home.
This would be more than one home.
Some of the policies cover, and I'm going to start with just the homeowner's insurance. Some of the policies cover if it's just in your home. Some of the policies cover pipes that are in your property. Other policies cover the street, your home, your property. I mean, all of it. So it really depends on what your particular policy covers. If it's a pipe bursting, I've seen it that the flood insurance program, sometimes it covers it, sometimes it doesn't. It's going to depend on lots of other factors. Yes, sir.
If you're in a condo and there's a fire in your upstairs apartment and the automatic sprinklers go on, how does that impact what you're talking about?
Okay, condominium unit. You are on the second floor. The person on the third floor, they leave the pot on. And it was accident. And so the pot basically catches everything on fire, and the condo unit sprinklers come on. Under your policy, as opposed to the third per floor person policy, your policy would cover the water damage from the sprinklers. When you would be able to go after the person on the third floor is if they did something that they were liable for. So basically, you would have to show that they intentionally did that particular action.
What if they stupidly did something?
The law lets people be stupid all the time. Yes, ma'am.
For the definition of a flood, I was reading some of the policies, they said it had to impact 3 properties or something like an acre.
That you're talking about, you're not looking at homeowners, you're looking at flood insurance. And the flood insurance program, what it says is 1 or more, because sometimes the property that it has to impact could be the street. So if you have flooding at your home and the street, that could be deemed to be a flood. And they don't have to be adjacent properties. So let's say water, you've got your neighbor's home, and your neighbor's home sits way back, but because of the angles of the home, it floods you and somebody 2 doors down. That would be generally deemed as a flood. But once again, it's very fact specific. Yes,
The
sir.
decision about purchasing flood insurance, I assume it has to do with whether you're in a floodplain and all these other considerations.
You can go to floodsmart.gov, plug in your address, and that'll give you the price for a flood insurance policy. And basically, flood insurance is just like every other type of insurance. The more risky you are, so the more likely it is that your property will flood, the more you're going to pay for it. Okay? But floodsmart.gov, and that address is in the natural disaster brochure. Yes, sir.
So should we contact like Service Pro ahead of time, so flood cleanup people and tell them what insurance we got and have them on call, or do they offer some type of gap insurance or something that would help us out?
Well, let me start with this. Anytime you contract with a company, before the insurance company has the chance to do anything, there's a chance that the insurance isn't going to pay for it, and you would be liable. So, I mean, I see it rather frequently. People contact restoration companies to come out once they've had damage and to dry out their home or to remove their clothes and wash them for them. And then the insurance company says, this isn't a covered loss. And then ServPro says, well, that's real nice, but you owe us. So you need just to be careful. You need to mitigate and protect yourself, but just realize that before you start having contractors and companies come out and do all kinds of work, you need to make sure that you've got a way to pay for it. And if it's not a covered loss, the insurance company is not going to pay for it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Now, you asked about gap insurance. This is what I tell folks. The best type of gap insurance that you can do is to put some money aside and be a lot more disciplined than I am, so that when you have a loss, you've got some money to pay for your deductible and any incidentals. Because that way, you're not waiting on that insurance check. Okay? I saw another hand someplace.
So a question for you. So a friend of mine had his house catch fire. Wasn't a total loss. Insurance came in and said, yeah, we can cover you and all that. But they used their contractors versus a contractor of his choice. And based upon general consensus, the contractor didn't exactly do what they should have done, quite frankly. It was obvious that they cut corners. It's obvious they tried to cosmetically repair versus structurally, that type of thing. Now, obviously, there's a code thing that they had to adhere to, but what's the recourse in that circumstance where there's a question about the replacement work?
Okay, first and foremost, you always have a choice with a contractor. Insurance companies can say, these people are on our list of contractors, but you don't have to use them. You always have a choice. But here's the benefit of using one of their contractors. That contractor should be licensed with the Department of Labor Licensing and Regulations. We call it DOLLAR. And because of that, that contractor has to do certain things in compliance with the code, but also in the compliance with good workmanship. So if you believe that the contractor hasn't done the repairs properly, you file a complaint with DLLR, and they will investigate it to determine whether the action was proper or not.
Is there a certain amount of time that it has to be filed?
That I don't know the answer to, but I'm sure if you go on their website, they will tell you that. It'll probably have that information there.
Yeah, in this particular circumstance, basement fire, and there was a question about the joists on the upper level floor that should have been replaced. They did replace about a third of the floor itself and so forth, but there was other question about, I'll say for the sake of discussion, another half of the basement. And what they chose to do was essentially remediate damage and then to paint over
Yeah.
where there's scorch marks.
And that's one of the things that you can go to Dollar and complain about. Yes, sir.
So what's the best way to document your items in your house? Pictures or receipts?
You got a choice. You need to do, and you'll see in the natural disaster book, a personal property inventory. You can either go through like it does in the book and write all that stuff down, or you can take pictures, or you can do a video. But this is what I tell folks. Don't forget the stuff in the closets. Don't forget the stuff in the garage. That's where the money is. I can tell you how many televisions I have. I just need to close my eyes and think about it. But what's the stuff that I have in my closet? What about in the cupboards? A lot of people don't realize that the china that they use every holiday is now ruined until they try to pull it out for the holiday. So if you've got that list, that's how you remember. So once you have either the list, the pictures, or the video, what do you do with it? You don't leave it in your house. I tell people that have businesses, put your business stuff at home, put your home stuff at your business, unless they're all in the same building. Then you can use a safe deposit box, put it in the cloud if you happen to trust the cloud, give it to a loved one. But every year, you need to update that, unless you don't get anything new every year. Because over time, things change. Okay? Well, oh, yes, ma'am.
So you had mentioned the written notice for, your tree's gonna fall on my house. Is there anything similar with water damage? The way you built that, it's definitely gonna flood my house next time it rains.
You can try it. I mean, you are able to put people on written notice for just about anything, whether or not a court, because that's where it's going to end up in court, is going to determine that that person is liable. It's going to depend on the judge you get. Yes, sir.
A similar situation in a townhouse community. One neighbor takes immaculate care of his place, the other place, he just lets it lapse, and for example, he has insects going in and so forth. Does the immaculate housekeeper have any kind of recourse? I mean, can you put that person on notice that you have termites in your property?
And you're worried about the termites coming over?
Yeah, we're adjacent neighbors.
You can try, but once again, that's really going to depend on the judge. And I don't think I've ever seen, because I also hear cases occasionally, not occasionally, a lot, but I've never seen anyone prevail on anything like that. But it doesn't, just because I haven't seen it, doesn't mean you couldn't.
Is it advisable to put that person on notice that your bugs are likely to mess up my house?
You can. And I tell people, these kinds of disputes, I have seen ruin relationships with neighbors. So it's a judgment, just like everything else. It's a judgment call. You had yes, ma'am.
This is a horror story, and it was in Pennsylvania, so perhaps you could warn people that the same is true in Maryland. We had our home totally destroyed by fire, and we had replacement cost homeowners insurance and found out there was a difference between replacement cost and guaranteed replacement cost.
That's that particular insurance company. Some companies have stepped it up a little bit. Not all companies. It's most companies only use the term replacement cost. There are and I'm not even sure in Maryland whether we have approved that language in any policy. But that goes back to the very beginning. Understanding what your policy does and doesn't cover, and reading those love notes. Because that policy, I can tell you, started out as a replacement cost policy. And then later on, and the way they tell you, we realize that your insurance premium has gone up. Have we got a deal for you? We're going to allow you to keep your premium the same by just changing these terms. It's not a big change. It's a little bitty change. When you get that love note, your ears should go up. You should be calling and understanding what that change actually means. Okay? Because that's what happened with some of the policies when, and this is something that I know is in Maryland. Roofs. You know your roof depreciates over time, right? There was a period of time that now they've always been very limited on what they're going to cover. So if only a few of the shingles are damaged, you're only going to get money for the damaged shingles. Well, now also some of the companies do something called depreciating the shingles. So if I have a 20-year shingles and 10 years in, I have damage to my roof, they're going to depreciate how much they're going to pay me for my shingles. Read your policy. Read your policy. I saw this gentleman here, and then
Back a bit to the water sewer backup. I live in a townhome, so I'm not really sure the risk I have of that happening, and then how much of my house is covered or needs to be covered as opposed to what the county takes care of.
I can't speak to what the county does and doesn't cover. I can only speak to what your insurance policy will and won't cover. And here's the answer. It depends on the layer of the contract. Some of them cover if the backup is caused by something on your property. Some of them cover if the backup is caused by something between your property and the street, and some of them cover even more. So what you need to do is look at your contract and talk to your insurance representative. Okay? Young lady?
If electricity goes out for a couple days, and your sump pump can't work, and so you get water in your basement, what covers that?
It depends. Some policies will cover if the sump pump goes out because of natural causes, like the electricity going out. Some of the policies only cover if there's a major electrical shortage to one of the major things. Once again, and I know you guys are sick and tired of me saying it depends, but it does. And just because your policy covered it last time doesn't mean it's going to cover it next time. That's all in the love notes.
I actually have a policy sentence, read it every year, but I don't feel like it's the whole policy, because it's not.
They're not sending you the whole policy every year, I'm telling you that. They're sending you pieces every year. Absolutely. The only thing they're sending you every year are the updates. They're not sending you the whole policy. No. But you can contact them and tell them you want it. Yes, sir.
So when I called for flood insurance, they pulled up a map where they were at and said, okay, well, this is what it's going to cost you. So does it matter whether I move all my utilities that were in the basement that have a bigger chance of getting flooded, and I move them up now to the first floor to where it's like a zero, maybe, real low chance? Does that matter on the policy?
That sort of thing I don't believe, but there are certain steps that you can take to mitigate, and that's in that flood insurance information. So it's, and I know I'm going to mess this up, but it's how far your, the things on your basement that you open and close, how far they are from the ground. There are all these steps that you can do to bring the cost down. But moving the washer and dryer and all that stuff up, those I don't believe are things that bring the price down. But it's called mitigation. So your question for them is, what steps can I take to bring the price down? Okay? Yes, sir.
I have a question that's aside from the conversation we've had tonight. There are some insurance companies that say they will give you back all of your premiums.
Baltimore Equitable.
Yes.
Yes. I cannot recommend any insurance company, but Baltimore Equitable, when it comes to homeowners insurance, has been around forever. And yes, based on the contract, they will give you back your premium. But let me tell you, to get insured with Baltimore Equitable, it costs a nice chunk of change. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a good guide or sort of checklist on when I read my policy, here's some things I should evaluate based on?
The small yellow brochure, Consumer Guide to Homeowners Insurance. Okay? All right. Make sure you get some of the materials on the back table, and thank you all for coming.